I'm 34 years old. Today I'm stronger, more flexible, and I have more energy than I've ever had. I train just 4 times a week. I don't count calories anymore. I can hike, play sports, and travel without thinking twice. And I get all of that without letting fitness consume my life. But just a few years ago, my life looked completely different. I was training 6 to 7 days a week and running 40 to 50 kilometers every week, and I counted every single calorie. I tried to optimize absolutely everything. On paper, I was doing everything the fitness industry tells you to do. But in reality, I was stiff, constantly tired, bloated, and always dealing with small injuries. Without even realizing it, fitness had become my identity. Looking back now, I realized something. I wasn't training too little, and I wasn't lacking discipline. I was simply building my fitness in the wrong order. Changing that completely transformed the way I train, eat, and live. I now call that approach the championship season. Because all it takes is building your fitness the same way an athlete prepares for a championship season. And in this video, I'll show you exactly how it works. But when I first started going to the gym, I believed one thing. I thought training was everything. I was skinny and insecure, and I wanted more confidence, of course. And like most guys, I thought lifting weights was the answer. So that was my only focus. I trained hard. I was obsessed. I learned everything about training that you can imagine. I tried to optimize every single workout, and it actually worked. I built some of the muscle I wanted, I did get stronger, and I looked good. But here's the caveat. Outside the gym, my life hadn't really changed. I still lacked the daily structure, still tired, with no energy, and stressed. I kind of felt as if I was always one step behind. So despite training consistently, I still felt inconsistent, which is super weird if you think about it. Now, of course, I was definitely improving my body. But the thing is, I wasn't improving my life. And looking back now, that was the first lesson I had learned. That training in itself can change your body, but it definitely cannot change your life. But then something happened that completely interrupted my training. I had to prepare for a physical entrance exam for university. And for the first time in a long time, it wasn't just about lifting weights anymore. I stopped drinking, and all of a sudden, I started taking sleep more seriously. I actually created routines. So, in other words, I became more disciplined with how I lived. My lifestyle completely changed. And something surprised me. Despite losing a lot of muscle mass in that training process, I gained a lot in return. My confidence improved a lot. My focus improved. I had way more energy, less anxiety. I felt like a completely different person. Not because of a new way of training or, I don't know, adding another 5 kilos of muscle mass, but simply because my life had become more stable, more structured. And I knew something felt different. Looking back now though, I know I just had accidentally stumbled across something I had completely overlooked, something that training hadn't given me. But unfortunately at that time, I didn't fully understand that. Why? Because I approached fitness still with the same old mindset, that training is everything. I was still chasing the same thing I had always wanted. I just wanted to build my dream physique. So in other words, I just wanted to be big, really big. Even though I did experience how a better lifestyle improved my life, I just ignored it and basically threw it out of the window again. And instead, I convinced myself that nutrition was actually the missing piece to it all. So I went all in. I counted calories, I bulked for a few months, and everything suddenly became about macros and just eating as much as I could. And again, I mean, to be fair, it did work. I gained a lot of muscle. I got bigger than ever before. But I also felt bloated, heavy, tired, and sluggish. I had fallen into the same freaking trap again. I was improving my physique, but without improving how I actually felt. But then came the phase in my life that changed everything. I was working a full-time job, training 5 to 6 times per week and running 40 to 50 kilometers on top of that. I was completely locked in. I was trying to recover perfectly. I was trying to eat perfectly, and I tried to optimize everything. And it actually worked, again. And on paper, I was the fittest I'd ever been. I was big and able to run very long distances. But in reality, I was exhausted all the time, and I felt stiff and couldn't move the way I used to. I was constantly thinking about training, constantly thinking about food, constantly thinking about optimization. Without realizing it, fitness had become my identity. It had completely consumed me and my day-to-day life. That's when I slowly but surely started to connect the dots. Because up until that point, every phase of my journey had taught me something. Training had taught me one lesson. Lifestyle changes taught me another one. And so did nutrition. The funny thing is, life had actually already shown me years earlier how powerful lifestyle changes could be. But I never ever considered treating them as the foundation. Instead, every time I wanted a better result, I just kept looking elsewhere, kept pushing harder, and thought that doing more was the answer. Until I pretty much hit a kind of like a fitness burnout, and my body was stiff and achy. You see, the problem was for years I treated fitness just as an accumulation of different units, kind of like separate pillars that all need to be approached individually, with different levels of importance. I never connected the dots. I thought fitness is basically just this. You train in the gym, and if you want better results, you push harder. So that's what I mainly focused on. That was my priority number one. Then nutrition came second, because the way I interpreted nutrition in the context of fitness was purely counting calories and macros, the bodybuilding way, in a very unsustainable way. Lifestyle was third, or rather, it didn't even really consider it to be something related to my fitness. In other words, my burnout was inevitable, because only years later did I start understanding the importance of the lifestyle variables. But looking at it today though, it's actually incredibly simple. Back then, I thought I had to solve different individual problems, but I was making the same mistake over and over again. Without realizing it, I was always trying to solve my fitness from the top down, meaning whenever I wanted a better result, I looked to training first. I thought this was the answer. More is better. And if that wasn't enough, I looked to nutrition. The lifestyle, meaning the sleep management, the stress management, and the gut health, those became things I would just, take care of later. The problem is that this approach is pretty much comparable to the way that, let's say, they're building the villas in Bali. Very unsustainable. All they care about there is to make the interior design of a villa look very nice, without properly actually building its foundation. Now the house ends up looking very, very nice, but it has constant water leaks, lots of mold, and a bad sewer system. No matter how beautiful the interior design is, without the foundation there will always be issues. And this is exactly what happened to me during my journey. I ended up looking good, but I was either stressed, bloated, tired, or stiff with aches and pains. All due to the wrong approach and wrong priorities. And I don't think what I experienced is actually unique. Not at all. I think this is actually how most people approach their fitness, and why they never get the actual results they want. Yeah, we chase workouts, then ridiculous diets, and only when we are burnt out do we finally, maybe, start asking questions about the life surrounding those things. And that's what happened to me. And that's when I asked myself a different question. I asked myself, how can I approach my health and fitness in a sustainable way? If this is how most of us approach fitness, who actually gets it right? And my mind kept coming back to the same group of people that I admire so much. The athletes. Because I have always admired the way they train, yes, but also the way they handle their life outside their sport in order to actually perform at their best. And so I started asking myself, what are they doing differently? And then it clicked. Because athletes don't spend their whole year trying to perform. They first prepare to perform. They don't start their season in the playoffs. They earn the playoffs. Every season starts long before anyone sees them competing. It starts by building a foundation. Then they fuel that foundation. And then they train. And only then do they actually ask their bodies to perform at the highest level. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just a thing for athletes, actually. It was a way of how life should be approached in general. Preparation always comes before performance. So why am I, as an everyday person, not approaching it in the same way to reach my goals? Because the problem was that I had spent years trying to perform before I had ever prepared my life to support it. I had jumped straight into the regular season and then the playoffs, if that makes sense. And I don't think I'm the only one. Most people approach fitness by asking the wrong questions. They immediately want to know what's the best workout or what's the best diet. But only very few people stop to ask, does my lifestyle actually support either of those things? That was the question that changed everything for me. Because the more I thought about it, the more I realized something else. All these years, I had been chasing the wrong identity. Because I never wanted to be or live like a bodybuilder. Or a gym bro for that matter. I didn't want fitness to become my life. But that's exactly what happened. But what I actually wanted though, was to simply look like an athlete. A jacked one. Someone who's strong, looks athletic, moves well, feels healthy, has lots of energy, can hike, can play sport, can travel, and can enjoy life outside the gym. Someone whose body supports their life instead of demanding the life to revolve around fitness. And that became the goal. And once that goal changed, everything else changed too. Because I stopped thinking about fitness as a random accumulation of workouts and diets. I started thinking like an athlete and one who is trying to get the best out of his season, preparing for a championship. And that new mindset and approach became what I now call the championship season. Finally, treating fitness and health in the right way, starting from the bottom up and not the top down, making sure the foundations are in place first by starting in the off season. Unfortunately, this is what most people consider to be the boring part. However, as you can probably tell by now, I think it is actually the most important one, because the goal of the off season is not to build muscle, it's to build the life that can support building the muscle, the checked and athletic physique. This is where you design your foundations and regulate the nervous system with sleep management, stress management, recovery, and proper routines. But more importantly, you design your off season in a way to support your own life, because at the end of the day, everyone's season looks different. A university student, for example, has different demands than a parent, and a business owner has completely different demands than someone working shifts. Just like athletes who play different sports, they have to prepare differently. Hence, your off-season should prepare you for your life and not someone else's, of course. So the goal is not perfection here, though. It's creating a lifestyle where consistency becomes sustainable. Now, once the foundation exists, we make sure we support it. Hence, in the pre-season is where nutrition comes into play, but not as punishment, and of course, not as obsession, because we are not chasing the perfect diet here. Purpose of nutrition is simple. We restore your gut health and make sure to further improve your energy, to help your body and mind feel at its best ultimately. Yes, body composition matters too, of course, because I do care about aesthetics as well, but they are not the objective here. They will be a natural consequence and the result of all the right changes. And now, only once we enter the regular season does training actually become the main focus. Again, I really want you to notice the order. Lifestyle supports nutrition. Lifestyle and nutrition support training. Training doesn't have to carry everything on its own anymore. Training is the one pillar that is now being carried by the others. And because of that, in the regular season, you now feel energized and present. And training actually then finally becomes enjoyable. You become stronger, more athletic, more mobile, more resilient, whatever the case may be. Because you're no longer training to survive the gym and to endlessly push through it no matter what. The natural consequence of everything you've built up until now then is you being physically prepared for the playoffs. Notice how I say prepared to push your performance, because now you have actually earned it. Your lifestyle, or rather your foundation, supports you. Your nutrition supports you. And your training supports you too. You can now truly express everything you've built and chase your own kind of championship. Maybe that's chasing a specific physique goal, actually. Running a marathon, learning a new skill, whatever the case may be, setting a personal record. Whatever your version of performance looks like. But, like for every athlete, remember this, our season ends too. You don't stay in the playoffs forever. Life changes, maybe your goals change, your work changes, but you are now prepared to chase one championship after the other. That's the whole beauty of it. But remember, it always begins in the off season. Now, if you're watching this, don't put your whole approach to fitness now completely upside down, even though that is ultimately the goal. But instead, just start with this. Ask yourself the following questions. Which phase of your season are you in right now? In other words, is there a phase that you completely skipped? Or maybe one that you didn't approach properly? Because your health mindset is very likely still centered around training, where you try to fix everything with more training, or crazier nutrition hacks, and simply more discipline and pushing harder, when the real problem is that your life doesn't support any of those things yet. So, you probably need to start there. Look at the foundations, your lifestyle variables, and I guarantee you, that's where the biggest return will come from. When I started going to the gym 15 years ago, I thought I was chasing more muscle and a more impressive physique. But subconsciously, what I really was chasing was a better life. It just took me years to realize that these are two different things and built in a completely different way. Now today, I still care about looking good. A lot, actually. I still love training. I still enjoy pushing myself. But fitness is no longer the center of my life. It's something that helps me enjoy the rest of it. And that's the biggest lesson I can leave you with. Because ultimately, the goal of fitness is not to make fitness your life. The goal of fitness is to make the rest of your life better. If you have made it this far, I'd love to know in which phase of your season you are currently in at the moment. Are you focused on training, nutrition, or maybe even lifestyle? And if this way of thinking and this approach to health and fitness resonates with you, I send out weekly emails where I share the ideas, lessons, and systems that have helped me build a body that supports my life instead of controlling it. You can join using the link below. Now finally, If you're actually looking for more personalized guidance, you can send me a message on Instagram with the word championship for an audit where I break down your current approach and show you what you might be doing wrong.